Hi, and welcome to the Intelligent Inbound podcast brought to you by Smartbug Media. I'm your host, Jen Spencer, and today I'm speaking with Brandon Voss, president of the Black Swan Group. Now, if you haven't heard of them, the Black Swan Group solves business communication problems with hostage negotiation strategies. And I think, oh, that's interesting. Well, it was founded by former FBI lead hostage negotiator Chris Voss. And at the Black Swan Group, they teach a unique combination of negotiation skills that are all developed from teachings at Harvard Law School, Scotland Yard, and the FBI. I'm so excited to speak with you today. Welcome, Brandon.
Jen, I am so happy to be here. Very excited about our conversation.
Wonderful. Well, we were just, catching up before we hopped on and started recording and thinking, gosh, how long has it been since we first met? And it was about 5 years ago when I came to meet you and your team. And I want to ask you, and this is fun for me to ask you this now, 5 years later after working with Smartbug. Um, what does the word inbound, this is the Intelligent Inbound podcast, right? What does
Yep.
inbound, what does it mean in your revenue organization when you think about marketing, sales, customer success?
Yeah, no, and it means much more than it did before we got together with Smartbug. And so, simply put, inbound is those the people that want to pay us. I mean, they're out there, they're looking for us, they're hot to have our content, they're hot to work with the Black Swan Group, and they're actively seeking someone that can help them solve difficult negotiation problems. And so they're looking for people like us. But even more so than that, especially with the work we've done with Smartbug over the years and how we fine tune our funnel and really got specific about the way we're delivering content to the public, our inbound has become our lifeblood. I
Mm.
mean, it is how all revenue is created at this point because we've gotten the system down to be so efficient.
And how, maybe we can talk a little bit more about the shift, right? How has your go-to-market strategy evolved over the years? And can you maybe think about like some of the different catalysts that have happened? Maybe there were shifts or changes in the market, in the industry, but how is the way that you go to market now different from the way you went to market 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I'd say we were much more scattershot in the past, right? We were casting a wide net. We were trying to serve as much content or as many skills and different approaches to communication process, just coming at it from all different directions.
Hmm.
And being more pointed, but more specifically, right? There's always people out there that are looking to improve their communication. More often than not, people want to improve their leverage in negotiation versus create lasting relationships with people where
Yeah.
everyone profits. And that's where we got really specific through working with Smartbug, really weeding out the difference between people that are just looking to gain more leverage and how do I persuade better versus the
Mm.
people that are actually looking to change the way they communicate, almost make it a lifestyle habit and create lasting relationships of influence. And that really helped us delineate between the two.
And do you think that was a result of just better understanding your customer, like your buyer? Or do you think that there kind of are other external factors that shifted that you can recognize?
Yeah, combination of things.
Yeah.
Identifying the buyer better, right? But also a little trial and error, right? Like a lot of people
Hmm.
in business and on lots of in different aspects of life, you gotta get burned a couple times before you get it through your thick skull, right? And so we went through some of that in the growing pains, and having Smartbug help us identify some of these things was a big part of it. But as far as big shifts, like obviously the most recent, what happened with COVID a couple of years ago, that was a huge shift for us. And what was nice is it's the momentum that we had gained marketing live events through Smartbook, as well as distributing our content. But the momentum we got from the live events left us in a place where people were still looking for us, even though they couldn't come see us in person.
Mm.
And that momentum, 18 months before COVID started, like that's where we really started to earn our bones without realizing it. And when COVID
Mm.
hit, because we had this great momentum going, even though there was a huge shift, we're able to keep in touch with the people that want to know more about what we're doing and how they continue to learn and be better communicators while the world is seemingly on fire,
Mm-hmm.
right? How do I communicate
Yeah.
in these very difficult conversations? And Smartbug helped us keep a relationship with that aspect of the community.
How I don't know if maybe you can kind of put yourself back in this place where you were, 5, 6 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
because, when, like, to your point, like when the pandemic hit, a lot of businesses that had relied on in-person events, whether they're big kind of, trade shows, expositions, or kind of on-site demonstrations. Obviously, I remember when we first met. I mean, your business was generated through live events, through a lot of word of mouth, right? And you guys were
Mm-hmm.
doing well, right? There was not a catalyst like COVID, like a pandemic, that was forcing you to
Mm-hmm.
embrace digital, right?
Mm-hmm.
You preemptively, you decided to do it, and it paid off, right? Like, it put your, like, to your
Yes.
point, put yourself in a really good position. Do you recall what inspired you to embrace digital at a time when things were working pretty well for the business?
Yeah, that is a really good question. It's multifaceted, and I can't answer this question without bringing my wife up. And so Jen knows
Sure.
my wife very well. My wife Maya. I was fortunate enough to convince my wife to come work with Black Swan and help us with our marketing division because we were struggling at that time. Back 5, 6 years ago, we really were struggling. We needed some real help, and
Mm.
she had a skill set that we could use. And
Hmm.
she's the one who originally found Smartbug. And I know, Jen was our representative at the time. Her and
Yeah.
I built a great relationship that has obviously lasted. And so the first answer to your question is because my wife said so, right? Which is always a good answer if you're a married man, right? So that's part of it. But not, but really, like even on a serious note, like just getting with the times and figuring out. We always had aspirations to be multinational,
Mm.
and that's not going to happen if we're spending all this time running around in the States. We're not going to figure out how to get on the other side of the pond without some help from the digital world, right?
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. And I think that was a big part of it. And it made sense, especially demographically, to
Yeah.
be more targeted in our live events. We're trying to do live events, and we're wide net, right? We're not. If we're in Atlanta, we don't have very targeted social media. We don't have very targeted ads for people that live in Atlanta, right? That's not something we were
Hmm.
doing at that time, and so that was one of the huge shifts for us, and it just made sense. And if we were an internal motto of ours is we will never be Blockbuster, and so that
Mm.
was that kind of
Mm.
folds in together, as it were.
Yeah. Never be blocked. And I'm just gonna kind of assume you mean you don't want to be the one who didn't innovate, who didn't change, who kind of died on the vine, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah. Yes. And there's a few brands like that, like in different industries, that are, yeah, cautionary tales for sure. So
Hmm.
that's actually a really good segue, for me. You're in your role today. You're the president of the organization. You're essentially overseeing all the business operations, of the organization. As as you recognize there are different shifts and changes that are happening in your industry, how do you prepare your team for that? How much do you try? How much are you in the moment? How much are you looking ahead? And like, what have you learned? Especially, we've all been through quite a bit, over the last couple of years. We talked about the pandemic. We're in the middle of, some challenges with the economy today as we're recording this, right? How much brain space do those, external factors take up for you, and how do you communicate that with your team?
Yeah, that's great. There's definitely a lot there, and if I begin to ramble, please feel free to cut me off. But no, there's a lot there, and I think culturally, that's where I think it starts for us. We've always been a place where we're looking to adapt. We're looking for the next best thing. We understand that the landscape is going to change, and so that's what's really great about the organization. That's where we come from. But then as we've learned, personally as a leader, one of the things that I found out is, especially if you got someone new, someone hopeful, someone that's ready to attack the world, especially on behalf of
Mm-hmm.
your organization, warning them of potential problems that they might see as they go on that attack might not necessarily be the best approach. And I think a lot of leaders kind of fall into this of like, you want to warn your people, you want to take care of them, you want to help them think out in front 4 or 5 steps. And usually comes in the form of, let me lay out for you what this is going to look like. I'll explain the landscape to you.
Mm-hmm.
And making a shift to helping them see the problems themselves, right? What are the potential pitfalls that we might run into? Instead of let me just explain it to you, let's walk you through it. And specifically on kind of on the marketing side, what has really shifted for us is, um, getting a really good feel for our users' journey from the
Mm-hmm.
outside in, how they experience our brand. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, we've always been very introspective in like, this is what we want to look like, and this is how we want to display our message. But I haven't spent enough time focusing on how people experience us from the outside. And interestingly enough, those are often two very different things. How you feel like you might look versus what the public actually sees or what they feel like they have a need for could be very different. And that's one of the things for us as we begin to change and learn and grow, really starting to understand that dynamic versus internal and external.
How much of that, of like measuring, like if you think about like how do you measure your clients perceptions of you, like, and how, like, their sentiment, how they feel about you, um how how have you have, or I guess, has it been more qualitative? Have you gotten into quantitative metrics, and if so, what are the things that you're looking at?
Yeah, no, that's great. And so, a lot of the classics, right? Open rates, click-through rates, like
Hmm.
what are they paying attention to? How much time are they spending with our content? How much time are they spending working through different parts of what we offer on the in digital world, as it were, right? That those are big ones,
Yeah.
and I would say consistency, right? The
Hmm.
consistent interaction, continued interaction with us, and people's their willingness to work their way through various levels of learning. And so one of the things Jen and
Mm.
I were kind of catching up on, and through Smartbug's help, develop a learning system as opposed to here's a bunch of stuff you can take, get after it, and get smarter. Right now, here's the learning system. Here's level one. Here's level two, and people's willingness to work their way through all the levels. Right? Do they get to halfway through level one and quit? Or people get all the way up through level three and then they're hungry for more. And just being able to keep track of those things, keep track of those metrics of how people are experiencing the content and how long they're staying engaged, over, whether it's a month or a year, 6 months, how long it takes them to digest certain things that we're putting out there. I mean,
Hmm.
all those elements come into play.
How important is like thinking about revenue, like how
Mm-hmm.
important are repeat customers for you? Is that a big part of your business, or do people kind of typically come in, interact with you once, twice, maybe a handful of times, and then move on? How long, like how long do people usually kind of stay within your ecosystem, and are you like nurturing them and delighting them?
Yeah, that's a great question, and so I think we all know kind of at this point, right? The subscription model, the continued interaction over
Yeah.
time, right? That's how we continue to make money, and so
Yeah.
we are also we're on the same boat. And I will say, before we were working closer with Smartbug, we were much more of a one-off, and that's something we're
Mm.
still trying to figure out how to be better at, right? If people are engaging with us for about a year, 18 months, how do we
Mhm.
turn that into 3, 5, 10 lifetime? Right? Like, how do we start to even change that narrative? And so I'd say about the 2 year mark now, something
Mm.
like that, before people feel like, okay, I'm ready to fully take this on my own. And what people are
Mhm.
finding out specifically with our content is they do need to come back and do a refresh.
Yeah.
And so there is that element that people are discovering by themselves. But how do we expand that time frame, as it were? But the shift from the one-offs, right? We show up to an American Express and we do one training for one day and that's it.
Mhm.
Versus how we spreading out the learning over the course of a year. And that's been a huge shift for us. The latter is obviously much more advantageous. And so that's really where we want to focus and continue to, I like to say, Dan Sullivan, a strategic coach founder,
Yeah.
the thinking about our thinking, right? That's one of
Yeah.
the things we ponder around our sounding board, our white table. How do we approach that in the future?
You're in, such like a relevant, such a relevant, uh, business that you're in that as the world evolves, as things change in the world, right? Then different, negotiation skills, different tactics, those are going to evolve as well. So, a, there's going to be some that are most likely going to be mainstays, right? That are going to be consistent, that just have to do with kind of human behavior. But then
Mm-hmm.
there are other, especially in sales, there are certain sales tactics that may work really well in one kind of, again, like socioeconomic climate, that wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
work in another. And and I know something that you're particularly passionate about is on trust building. And
Mm-hmm.
I think this is really interesting also because, Brandon, like, I know you have a strong entrepreneurial spirit, and this is not your first rodeo, right? Like, you've been successful,
I've
from
been
a
lucky.
very
Have
early
been
age.
lucky. Yep. Yep.
And luck is, it's being, yes, there's a little bit of being in the right place at the right time and having support, but there's also like knowing, when to engage and putting in that hard work too. But I'm just wondering how, what have you seen, if you like put yourself in your customers' shoes? Where have you
Mm-hmm.
seen that they're gravitating, where they're looking for more from you? And from the Black Swan Group, from kind of, what are the skills that they're looking at kind of beefing up right now?
Yeah, that's a great question, and there's a lot there. And so, just kind of starting with this notion of trust, that's huge, and that's a consistent component of how humans interact with one another, right? The more trust we
Hmm.
have, the more that we'll probably get done as a team, right? The less trust we have, the more likely we're going to separate, right? And so that's kind of like the 2 + 2 = 4 thing. However, what we all kind of feel and know, and it's hard to put words to, is not only is it different in building trust per individual, but then it's also, to the point you were making earlier, building trust in an ever-changing environment,
Yeah.
right? What people are expecting from others, what they might accept as okay a year ago, that is no longer okay because we're on virtual so much now, and just people, their feel for one another is just different. And so that's what changes. Trust is always going to be the center of that. How we
Hmm.
get to trust quickly, that's what changes. And it's a sequential process. However, that sequence changes depending on what the circumstances are. And that's what also makes it confusing. And so, um, what we talk about a lot of times is, don't sound like the last person they didn't make a deal with, right?
Hmm.
If there are common things that everybody's using, and this differentiation between best practices and common practices. Best practices often become common practices, and then they become overused and almost dead practices at some point in their lifespan. And I think salespeople are plagued by that the most.
Yeah.
And right, common ground is one of those common sales techniques. The problem with common ground is every sleazy person on the planet wants to build common ground with you right before they cut your throat. And so, how do we avoid not sounding like them? And it's weird.
Right.
Well, we can't engage in common ground in the same way that a cutthroat would. And what does the process for that look like, right? Like, oh, that starts to make sense, but then what does the process look like? And a lot of it is just whatever value you bring to the table has got to come second. Whoever's at the
Hmm.
table, they came to the table for a reason. And it's actually
Hmm.
most important that you figure out what that reason is first before you start laying out how you can solve problems for them. And then
Yeah.
another big one, and this is a little bit more specific to skills, we actually limit our questions substantially. When
Hmm.
people get questioned too much, they tend to
Hmm.
feel interrogated. And
Hmm.
so, how do you gather robust amounts of information without asking questions? right? That's a huge part of our communication, and that's I think something that could serve a lot of salespeople. Right? Let go of the common ground thing because they're going to start sniffing cutthroat as soon as you go into common ground. And then how
Mm-hmm.
do I engage with you where you don't feel interrogated and you're willing to offer information you might not tell anybody else,
Mm-hmm.
right? Those are two big ones.
Gosh, that's such an interesting nuance because as a former sales leader myself, I grew up in this world of doing this thorough discovery call, right?
Mm,
Kind of
mm-hmm.
you have all this information you have to gather so that you can build this recommendation. And even looking at call recording, looking in my call recording software and looking at the balance of my prospect should be speaking the majority of the
Uh-huh.
time, and my salesperson
Uh-huh.
should be speaking for the least amount of time, and almost looking for like a 20/80 sort of like ratio of that. And what I'm hearing from you is not necessarily true, not necessarily the case, to your
Yeah.
point of it's like we as sales and marketing professionals, like we ruin stuff, right? Like every time there's a new social media platform and like everyone is enjoying it in an organic way and a very natural way, what do we as marketers do? We and salespeople we ruin it by looking at like how do we extract more value from this?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really interesting. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's a lot there I would agree with. I mean, there's a whole lot there I would agree with. And there is the notion around, the counterpart, right? The person who's going to do the buying, who's going to make the purchase, doing more talking than the salesperson. I would definitely say that that's true. But again, circumstance drive your strategy. And if you got a very analytical person that's looking to be informed in a certain way and they're very stoic and they feel like talking is going to reveal their position and they're scared to do it, again, right, we got a trust issue
Yeah.
going on here. If they're
Yeah.
scared to reveal, there is a trust thing. So there might be some things you need to say or verbalize to get
Yeah.
over that hump. And so then what does the verbalization become?
Yeah. Well, let's kind of switch gears for a little bit. Although
Yeah,
I could
please.
just I feel like I could just pick your brain and like just like extract so many great tips and things. Although folks should go check out Black Swan Group and learn for themselves as well. But knowing what you know now,
Mm,
right? Like thinking about your business and kind of what you had to face going into the pandemic and making decisions to invest in inbound and marketing and digital. Let's say you're starting a new company, brand new company. What is what would you do differently, or what are some things that you're like, all right, if I did this again, this is what I would do, especially when it comes to sales, right? Like,
hmm
would
hmm
you gravitate towards more towards inbound? Would you gravitate more towards outbound as you're getting your that new company kind of off the ground? Like, just love
hmm
to just get some reflection from you that's kind of separate from what you do at Black Swan, just what you've learned over the years.
Yeah, no, great. Again, just some great questions today, and it's interesting based on kind of my age. I'm going outbound first. I see a lot of merit there. Going inbound first, I
Hmm.
see a lot of merit there. So I was a period of my career when I was knocking on doors to make sales for Verizon, right?
Yeah,
And I've been that just outbound and
yeah,
attack and go get
yeah,
them. And so there's a certain amount of pride and there's probably a certain amount of ego that's
yeah.
tied to that for me personally.
Hmm.
But especially now, right? If I'm starting a brand new company today, coming out of the pandemic, the way everything is, there's so much that has shifted online, and people that were never online are now, they just have to be, right? That's become part of their life. I don't see any way around trying to attack getting inbound, right? Like get
Hmm.
content out there. If you're looking to start a business, you probably got a good idea, right? You wouldn't be wanting to
Yeah,
start a business if you
yeah,
didn't. And so
yeah.
the more mechanisms that you can build for people to experience your idea with you in the digital world, that's going to start your inbound stream, and people they're going to want to spend money in short order. And I
Yeah.
think one of the things and I don't know if it came from you guys specifically, it might have. I know you helped us put it out there, but this idea of don't be afraid to put out your best stuff,
Mm.
because your best stuff is what's going to bring people back again and again and again. And right, that little taste that we all feel in sales, right? Give them a little taste, and then they'll come back and they'll want a lot more, right? Like that whole
Hmm.
idea. That's how you accomplish that, right? And so
Hmm.
building out content where people can experience you online at will and give them reason to come seek out more. Like that's
Hmm.
the best way to do it in this day and age. I would have to go with the inbound for sure.
Well, I love that, and I'm not anti outbound, by the way, but I do believe in an inbound
Mm.
approach to outbound, right? Um,
Yes.
so it's like it's you hit on it. It's leading with value, right? It's if you have, in your case, there's a book that is a bestseller, and do you make people kind of purchase that book to then learn about you, or do you say, well, can we take parts of this book that we know really resonate with people and give those pieces away for free, and make deposits before we start making withdrawals. And if you like, I would take that mindset and you put that mindset on this idea of outbound, it actually can work really well. It's almost like you're sort of orchestrating an inbound activity, because let's be honest, right? Like inbound can take a lot of time, right? It can take
Mm.
a lot of time to
Mm.
kind of build that up, and it
That
takes some of that
momentum is a
patience.
tough build. Yes.
Right, right. Any kind of like words of wisdom around that, because it can be really frustrating when you're first getting started.
Yeah. Yeah, no, really, really good question. The first thing is just, being able to stick through it. Like, if you go in understanding that you're not going to hit a home run out the gate, I
Hmm.
think that's the thing. Like, I got a great idea, and if I build a better mousetrap, the world will be the path to my door. Like, that is not necessarily true. Entrepreneurs will line up and tell you why it's not. And
Yeah.
so I think we get caught up on, and some of it's human nature, right? We want this short term satisfaction,
Hmm.
but sticking with it, because the other thing about, especially for us, like developing the content, we figured out how to make the content better. We figured out how
Hmm.
to make it more digestible, and that came with time, right? We weren't
Hmm.
ready to be exposed to the world on an international level in our first month, right? We had
Hmm.
to get our messaging down properly, and then
Hmm.
also speaking to issues that matter to people.
Hmm.
And so it's, I mentioned leverage and relationships earlier, right? Those are two big ones in negotiation. But depending on the landscape, right? Before COVID, let's build the relationship, right? During COVID,
Hmm.
it's like, well, I would like to have more leverage. And so, right, if we're
Yeah.
titling things based on what people are looking to consume, that helps a lot. Then the message internally can shift, right? There's a lot of, here's how to have more leverage. Focus on your good relationships, right? And that became
Hmm.
how we started to develop some of that content, and people are eating it up. But that's a big part of it for sure. Putting that best foot forward, stick to itiveness, knowing that you got to hone it a little bit. It's going to take some time, and then when you can really start to specify with your SEO strategy, then you're going to be in good shape.
How do you keep your, and by the way, I should say I appreciate that kind of caution of like patience and sticking with something, and and if something sounds like a get rich quick scheme, it probably is just that, right? It's a scheme, right? It's a hack.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so and we can all sort of fall victim to, like, everyone's always looking for like a better, faster way, right? But sometimes you just have to kind of live through it. But are there certain data points that you like look at or recommend that folks look at? Anything that kind of keeps you sane, right? As you're kind of trusting in the process of like one day to the next. Like, any metrics that seem to matter more to you?
Yeah, there's a couple, and specifically in regards to like our subscriber list.
Hmm.
And some, it's easy to get caught up in how many subscribers you have on your list, and like the more the better. What matters is the engaged subscribers, and
Mhm.
purging your list. Like that was, we had like almost like a
Mm.
purge party here at Black Swan every once in a while, where we would like knock off a certain number of people that didn't have a certain level of engagement with our content, our subscriber list. And what we found is the people that we boot because their level of engagement is not high enough, they come
Mm-hmm.
back.
Hmm.
Like if those people want more, they will come back, and it's really interesting to have experienced that, being like, we want quality in our list. We don't just want to have the numbers, and then even
Mm-hmm.
people that we get rid of, like that. And I think that's the fear, right? You don't
Mm-hmm.
want
Oh
to lose
yeah.
people because like now I've lost 1,000 subscribers because I purged them all. Well, the 200 that really want to spend money with you, they'll come back. They'll come find you, especially if you've done a good job with Smartbug and setting up your funnel.
Well, and we, as human beings, I think there's a little bit of that sort of hoarder mentality. Or you look
Yes.
at, oh my gosh, how much it costs, how much work I had to do to get to this point, to build this list. And then,
Hmm.
but you're saying like, be real, like how much of that list are actually engaged? Like, what are you holding on to? Right.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I think a lot of people struggle with that. Even when you know better, I just think it's this human nature to want to hold on to them.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
and especially, you talk about the digital world, like eventually you're going to want to create a community at some point. And that
Yeah.
community is going to stem from your list. And if
Mhm.
you create a community where half the community, they love you, they're engaged, and the other half that you threw in the room with them are people that don't really care, it's
Mhm.
going to ruin everybody's experience, right? And so,
Yeah.
like, that's the other thing. You want to put high quality people with more high quality people and have them all experiencing your services and products together. That's how you do that, and you're going to have to cut some people out of your life in order to make it happen.
This is like a total aside, and I might lose. I'm like, if you're a musical theater dork like I am, I'll gain credibility. But there's a Broadway musical. It's called Title of Show, and there's a song, Nine People's Favorite Things, and
Uh-huh.
it's the whole theme is I'd rather be nine people's favorite thing than 100 people's ninth favorite thing. Um, and so as you were just sharing that with me, I can like just hear it playing in my head. So
Yes, that's a great way to put that. No, I haven't seen the musical. I've been to a few, right? My wife's into the musicals. I'll tell Maya you guys can go together.
awesome. Awesome. Okay, I want to ask you a question that's like, I want you to dream a little bit. So pretend, kind of time and money are not an issue. I know that's a big pretend. Like, hey,
Yeah.
like you just have like carte blanche.
Pretend all your problems have gone away, right?
Exactly, exactly, exactly. Where would you ask your marketing team to invest their next kind of dollars in? What's like something that you're like, that would be so cool to do?
Oh, that is such a good question, and I'm glad you warned me on this. And I apologize. I still got like a few things rattling around in my head because it's just like all the possibilities.
I
So
know,
what
I
what I'll
know.
what I'll go with is I would love to expand, specifically for the Black Swan Group. I would love to expand how we're interacting with our corporate clients, right? We do a lot of
Mm,
negotiation training, high level skills, right? We work with whale hunters and various other things. But if we could start to affect our corporate clients at a cultural level,
mm,
I would love to do that. And so we toyed with the idea of change management. I hate that term. Plus, it's also one of those common terms that kind of give people the heebie-jeebies sometimes. But if we could help with genuine cultural shifts that make people stronger from the ground up,
mhm,
that's what's going to help them from a negotiation standpoint. When everybody
mhm,
internally has an abundance mindset, right? The abundance
mhm.
mindset that helps you purge your list so you got a
Yeah.
stronger community, right? That same abundance mindset that was trickled all the way throughout an organization, and we help facilitate that. That'd be huge. And so I'd love to put a lot of
Yeah.
resources towards that and really help people from that level, building teams stronger, communication wise, productivity wise. It'd be a wonderful thing.
I absolutely love that. And I'm a firm believer in the importance of internal marketing and internal sales
Mm, mm,
and and also kind of the planning and preparation that you do as a team. While it might seem like it's what you want to go faster externally, the work that you do internally, you kind of can slow down, can really help you accelerate the way the impact you can make externally as well. So gosh, I'd love to see you do that too. I think it's great.
it
Beautiful.
would be fun.
Well, I have one more question for you, Brandon,
Please.
and just being that your past history with sales and sales leadership, and with a lot of the clients that you have, for the revenue leaders, sales leaders specifically that are listening or watching right
Mhm.
now, what do you think's most important for them today?
Ooh, what's most important for them? Well, I'll make a book recommendation and then I'll throw in a skill. How about that?
Great,
So, book
perfect.
recommendation, Selfishly, Ego, Authority, Failure, written by Derek Gaunt. He's also an instructor here at Black Swan. He has taken everything that we talk about with tactile empathy and communication and applied it to the leadership role, specifically in ego, authority, failure. I mean, it's all about leadership and how you communicate better and influence people at another level. And so that's my first book
Okay.
recommendation. And then, from a skill side, it's easy for us to get caught up in I am the leader and it's my job to tell people what to do. And not only that, people who are my direct reports, it's their job to listen to me, and they're looking for me to lead them. And that's probably one of the most common misconceptions about being a leader. And if
Hmm.
anything, your job is to help people grow, help them go beyond themselves and accomplish things that they didn't even know they could do. And the only way to do that is to help them see. And
Hmm.
while as a leader, it very much feels like you're beating around the bush when it's like, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Employee, listen to me and then just do what I say versus let me help you see, right? It
Hmm.
feels like you're beating around the bush. In the long run, you're going to create people that are loyal to you. Like people don't leave jobs, they leave managers.
Hmm.
And so the more you help people see and cultivate their ability to express themselves and learn and grow, the more likely that they're going to be loyal to you and to you alone.
I love it. I love it. Well, Brandon, thank you so much for joining me today. I think there's so many little golden nuggets, so many recommendations that you've provided and food for thought. And also, I want to mention, I know you're getting back into live events, which is great. And I want to let everyone listening know there is a workshop coming up at the end of October that the Black Swan Group is hosting in New York on influencing negotiation with tactical empathy. And I want to say, I personally think that tactical empathy, this is so critical in our socioeconomic climate today. And highly recommend the coursework that's produced by the Black Swan Group. Brandon, what's the best way for folks to learn more about all of these resources, everything that's available through your organization? Where should they go?
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Jen. So the website's the best place. Black Swan Ltd, like limited.com. You can find out more about the event that Jen just mentioned. It's also the easiest way to sign up for our weekly free newsletter called The Edge, right? The Negotiation Edge. And it's usually based on a topic that we've gotten directly from our contact list, right? Our people, our fans are dealing with negotiation issues every day and they throw ideas at us and then we just write blog topics about it. And so that's where those come from. Easily digestible, easy to add something to the repertoire on a daily basis. And so a great way to find us on the website.
Perfect. And it is a very value first newsletter. So I highly recommend it. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Please join me next week for another episode of the Intelligent Inbound podcast. You'll meet another industry expert who, like Brandon, leans into the inbound methodology. And if you learned something today, please pay it forward by rating and reviewing us on your podcast listening platform of choice. Make it a great day, everyone.